Hi there. This is about how to plan a menu for your event. We've already had part one, and I'm going to give you part two, the secrets of planning a great menu for your event that your guests will talk about for years to come. Hi, I'm Jillian with Caribbean Caterers, and let's jump right into it because we've already talked about the seating style. That was part one. And if you haven't heard that part of the series yet, I encourage you to understand how you can seat your guests for your event. And we've put a link to that first part of the series here for you. So now that you know what type of seating you want, whether you want a fully seated room where everybody has their own dedicated seat, whether assigned or not, or you have a partially seated room where you're seating a certain percentage of your guests. That guests are things are going to be a little bit more fluid, a little more casual, less formal. You may be having a standing event like a cocktail reception or so. So now that you've determined that, what we're going to talk about now, you think it's the food, right? Not yet. Hold your horses. We still have to talk about the service style for the foods that we're going to select in the next part of the series. So we're coming to it, but believe me, all of these pieces are very important to coming up to that perfect menu. It's not just about picking a protein, picking some starches, picking some sides, picking a desserts. It's so much more than that. So let's jump into this part two, which is all about your service style. Now, most people are familiar with the plated style of service or the buffet style of service, but there are other styles of service, and in each of those that people are familiar with, there are many types of variations that you can have as well that change again the experience that your guests are going to have. So let's talk about the plated first. Now, with the plated, there is some source of confusion out there. And let's listen up carefully here. People talk about a seated meal and they tell me, oh, I don't want to have a seated meal. I want to have a buffet. Well, they're mixing up seating style with service style because you can have a seated affair and still have a buffet. So let's think about that. You can seat all your guests and have a plated style of service, or you can seat all your guests and have a buffet style of service. So let's talk about the plated style of service, which always is fully seated. In the plated style of service, you have a few options there. You can have your guests make a choice of entree, and you do so via your RSVP card, or nowadays, of course, because everything is electronic, you can do an electronic poll where they've determined, you've given them their options and they've selected their options for your party. So that's the choice of option where you, as the host, will pick. In this case, on the choice, you usually pick four proteins like chicken, seafood, red meat like a beef or a lamb or so, and or vegetarian. So you can have all four of those as categories for your guests to choose. And we would have each of those entrees available for your guests in that case. The next variation in your plated is to have a single entree where you just choose the one entree that everybody is going to get. That's typical if you know your guests very well. It's typical if you're having maybe a smaller event that you can choose one thing that everybody would enjoy. It's typical if you're having a corporate style event where, maybe the meal is not the main event and it's sort of incidental and you can choose one thing that everybody would enjoy. Another option where you would make a choice is a dual entree. This is where you have two entrees on the one dinner plate. And so you can choose. You can choose, say, a chicken and a seafood, or a chicken and a meat, or a meat and a seafood. So you can choose any two entrees and then add those sides. And again, everyone gets the same plate. Now, here at Caribbean Caterers, what we do is that's what we offer to your large amount of guests, but we will allow you to make some exceptions for those people who maybe don't eat seafood will get a double portion of the chicken, or those people who don't eat the red meat may get a double portion of the seafood. And in either of the two options, we would do a vegetarian option. So you needn't worry that guests who are vegetarian, even if you chose a dual entree, their needs would not be met. As a matter of fact, having started as a vegetarian restaurant in the Caribbean decades ago, vegetarianism and veganism is very close and dear to our hearts. So, of course, it's not just vegan and vegetarian. There may be some gluten free, there may be some lactose intolerant. And so, what we do in a case like that is to make sure that the rest of the menu doesn't have any of those items so that all your guests could eat very confidently. And so that's the plated options that you can do. And again, with the plated options, the seating style will always be full seating. The next style of service is buffet style. And you can have a buffet style service with either a fully seated affair or a partially seated affair, depending on how formal or informal you would like your buffet. And you can have a buffet that is as elegant and as sophisticated and as upscale as a plated meal. And here at Caribbean Caterers, we've employed 3 or 4 techniques to ensure that your buffet is well organized, stays clean and neat, and everyone is well served and has someone to speak to about the items on the buffet. A lot of the things that the objections that most people have to on a buffet, we have resolved those on the ground to ensure that your buffet is elegant, well thought through, organized, and that everyone could have just what they need. Of course, the benefit of a buffet is that you have more options for your guests to choose from as opposed to the plated, where the options are pretty limited to what you have chosen for them. But with a buffet, they can choose all their options, as many or as little as they like. And again, on the one hand, you can have it fully seated with the same place setting, the same look as a plated meal, but then your guests do have to get up to the buffet to determine what they would like to eat. So there's that difference. The other style of buffet where it's partially seated, there is no place setting at all at the dinner table. You can have a casual buffet where your tables are not set with place settings like they were with the fully seated buffet. And so I want to give you a visual of that, in that when your tables are fully set, they look like the pictures you see on our website and our social media. They are grand, they are beautiful, and they have everything that an individual guest would need right at the table. The flatware, the glassware, the chargers, the napkin, the menu card, and the place setting looks scrumptious. Before you even eat, your feelings filled. And so, with a buffet that's not fully seated, there is no place setting on the table. The only thing on the table is your tablecloth and whatever centerpiece you may place at that table. The silverware, the napkins are at the buffet. The glassware for your drinks are at the bar. So you're collecting your food as you would like and sitting wherever you would like. And then typically in this case, there is not a formal meal time on your program. The meal is more for grazing, that people could come in and eat whenever they want, grab a bite, grab a little bit, and then dance and eat and mix and mingle, and then grab a little bit more and continue on. So, again, you see how you want your guests to enjoy your evening really is determined by the way you seat your guests and the service style that you have for your guests. So, the next style of service to consider is a family style. Again, another style of service that has to be fully set. It cannot be partially set for family style. So with family style, the tables are set fully like they are for a plated meal and for some buffets. But the difference here is that the variety that you had at a buffet, the menu items that you chose for a buffet, can be brought directly to each individual table on platters. So it's a cross between having the variety of a buffet, but that your guests are still seated, that they don't have to get up to attend a buffet to make their selection. So it's a nice cross between plated and buffet. But with family style, there are some limitations. The footprint of your centerpiece has to come into play. There are a few other things that have to come into play to make family style work. But as we're talking about seating style and service style, the seating style for family style has to be fully seated. And in that case, you have to have a actual meal time on your timeline for the family style meal to be served. And so we've talked for a while here, and I believe we will stop right now and stay tuned for another section that will tell you a little bit more now for each of the service styles, what types of foods, how you can put together the foods to suit those service styles. So again, this is Jillian with Caribbean Caterers. I'll see you soon.